This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
All right then, the Donald Trump and its tariff tango. These are certainly terrifying times that we do live in right now, and Donald Trump has come out with that announcement of slapping 25% tariff plus other punitive measures for buying energy from Russia as well, that military link. Let's break that down one by one. We've got these chapters divided for you. This is your one-stop shop to understand what's really happening at play. Take a look at this. Just 48 hours before the U.S. tariff hammer was due to fall, Donald Trump has made it official. India will be slapped with a 25% tariff on its exports to the United States starting August 1st, 2025. And this comes in the light of no trade deal finalized between the two countries as of yet. In a post on Truth Social, Donald Trump didn't hold back. He slammed India's obnoxious trade practices, soaring import duties, and a military love affair with Russia. Donald Trump claimed that India has some of the highest tariffs in the world and the most strenuous, obnoxious, non-monetary barriers of any country. Donald Trump also went on to say that India has always bought a vast majority of their military equipment from Russia and are Russia's largest buyer of energy, along with China, at a time when everyone wants Russia to stop the killing in Ukraine, adding, and this is the United States president saying, all things not good, with a fat exclamation mark right at the end. And it is important to note here that India is indeed Russia's largest energy buyer. Russia takes up 35.4% of India's oil import. This is followed by Iraq at 19.2%. And then we're also looking at Saudi Arabia at 14.1%. And finally, the smaller share going to the UAE at 10.1%. But Russia, the biggest share at 35.4%. So Donald Trump does have a point at that particular front. But ironically, this move comes just months after Trump and Prime Minister Modi promised to finalize a trade deal by the end of 2025 and ramp up trade to $500 billion by the year 2030. But it seems the stalled trade talks has clearly rubbed Mr. President the wrong way. However, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett, he said that President Trump is frustrated with the progress we've made with India, but he's also signaled at the same time that there is a silver lining. There is room for negotiation. Listen in to what Kevin Hassett had to say.
I think that there's still hope for progress, and if the progress isn't what the president wants, then the deadline will kick in August. Well, I think that what's going to happen is that India is going to cut their prices to the U.S. In order to maintain their market share. That's what everybody else has been doing. And then they might reconsider their practices, which have led to this higher rate. And over time, I would guess that Indian firms will be onshoring production in the U.S. and Indians might even open their markets more to us so that we reconsider a future trade deal.
Well, now responding to the tariff threats, the government of India said that they are committed to protecting and promoting the welfare of our own farmers, because we've already drawn that red line when it comes to the dairy sector, when it comes to our farmers. So promoting the welfare of farmers is of highest priority for India, promoting and safeguarding our entrepreneurs, and most importantly, the MSME sector, that's going to be protected by the government. So government statement saying that we're trying to understand and analyze the implications of such a statement coming from Donald Trump. But the statement added that the government will take all steps necessary to secure our national interests first, something that the government has been saying. But the question remains, is a balanced, mutually beneficial agreement still within reach or not? With me on the broadcast, and we're going to continue to decode these chapter plates one by one. Chapter number 1, let's start decoding that. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former Indian diplomat, joining us live from San Francisco, is with us here on the broadcast. Very warm welcome to you, Ambassador. And Dr. Monish Thorangbam, senior research consultant, Chintan Research Foundation, also with us on the broadcast. Ambassador, help the viewers understand here. Let's get the ball rolling here. Obnoxious, strenuous trade barriers. How does one decode the way and the tone, the tenacity with which Donald Trump has put out that post on Truth Social? Government of India has come out with its own statement, but what must have run through the External Affairs Ministry when they read that particular statement coming from Donald Trump?
Well, I think Donald Trump is pressurizing India as much as he can. He's in fact trying to arm twist us. Now, there are some very important sticking points in the trade deal, and we have repeatedly made them quite clear to the American side. These sticking points particularly relate to India's agriculture and dairy sectors. And as you yourself pointed out during your introductory comments, India cannot compromise on these matters because they pertain to national interest. Yielding on the U.S. demand to totally open up the agriculture and dairy sector would amount to compromising the interests of Indian farmers. They would be very severely hit. And therefore, we have made it very clear that we have grave concerns in this regard. Nonetheless, by using such strong language,
Right.
Trump is pressurizing us as much as he can and trying to make us give in. However, the government of India has reacted very cautiously to his remarks and said that they are studying what these proposals by Donald Trump mean, what his intention to impose 25% tariffs, what does it mean? And we are trying to convey to the Americans that we are keen on a trade deal. However, as I said, there are important sticking points which remain in regard to the trade deal, and we might not find it so convenient to yield to American pressure in this regard. Also, as regards his remarks about our purchasing Russian oil, as
Yep.
you yourself pointed out, we are a big buyer of Russian oil. In fact,
Yep.
imports of oil from Russia constitute the biggest component of our energy imports. And if we were to stop buying, then perhaps there could be a rise in the energy costs here. So we have to weigh in all factors.
Absolutely.
I don't think the government of India is going to yield to American pressure.
All right. Many thanks, Ambassador, for those opening comments. Dr. Tarangbam also with us on the broadcast. Doctor, do you think India is being unfairly treated at this point in time? Because Donald Trump has raked up the issue of military ties with Russia. But at the same point in time, Donald Trump's accusation about non-monetary trade barriers. I mean, is this India being unfairly treated at this point in time? Or do you think this move is about calling out India's balancing act on the global stage, which, by the way, we've been doing very nicely for the longest time now?
Thank you for the opportunity. I think, one is that definitely the India-U.S. so-called strategic partnership is at, a low point in recent times. And it has to do both with, the presidential style of Donald Trump and the negotiating style, as well as, I would say, geopolitics being reloaded in the international, system. First of all, as we are talking about this sort of downsliding in India-U.S. relationship, there is a broader geopolitics being played out, which is that there is also a downsliding of U.S.-Russia relationship, where from being more, amenable to a bonhomie with President Putin, there is some kind of frustration playing out in Washington by which Donald Trump has become more hawkish on Russia, threatening new sanctions, both primary sanctions and secondary sanctions, which are going to impact countries like India, and also promising that he's going to supply advanced missile systems to Ukraine. The other point is that Donald Trump administration has been seen reaching out to Pakistan in recent times, which is an eyesore in New Delhi. I don't know what is going to be the sustainability and the long-term trends of this opening bonhomie, where even the CENTCOM commander has been awarded one of the highest civilian awards in Pakistan recently, which is an eyesore for India too, coming right at the midst of the Operation Sindoor and terrorist strikes in India. I think there's also the case of Donald Trump's displeasure with the BRICS group, of which India is a very important partner. And
Certainly.
also we have to remember that in the coming days, India is going to host the Quad Summit, So this
That's a big question
geopolitics-
mark. That's a big question mark, Doctor, because if the
mark.
trade deal does fall out, then what happens to the Quad
Yeah.
Summit? That's a big question. We're
That's
going
a
to
big
save
question
that for the what next chapter. At this point in time, let me quickly take you inside the booming India-U.S. trade story as well. And this is the trade story, the crucial backdrop to the tariff storm that's now brewing. For the fourth year in a row, the United States remains India's top trading partner. In financial year 2024-2025, bilateral trade hit record 131.84 billion US dollars. India's exports to the United States soared over 11% to $86.5 billion, fueled by strong demand for our medicines, our telecom gear, our gems, our garments. The list is long. Meanwhile, imports from the US rose over 7%, totaling $45.3 billion, led by energy shipments and big-ticket items like aircraft and electrical machinery. The result is a healthy trade surplus for India. We're selling more to the United States than we're actually buying, and that seems to be rubbing Mr. President the wrong way. It's a powerhouse partnership fueled by growth, tech, defense, and energy. At least these are the words and jargons used at various global conferences. But just as it hits top gear, Donald Trump slams the brakes. A 25% tariff on Indian imports set to kick in from August 1st, and it could shake up the entire equation. Will this threaten India's booming export run? Will the United States still remain India's top trading partner? Ambassador, how much of a sore point is this actually for the US president? Because you spoke about arm twisting and whether this is strategic, because we've seen Donald Trump say those braggadocio statements and walk back on it just a couple of hours later as well. August 1st is still a couple of hours away, more than a day away. We don't know what's going to happen on that front. But how far and long will this arm twisting really take this partnership, which was supposed to be uplifted to a strategic partnership between India and United States? Big statements, but looks like mere lip service when Donald Trump comes out with these tweets.
You know, Donald Trump is not really sincere in his pronouncements relating to friendship with India. He's very transactional. He has repeatedly made it clear that as far as his policies are concerned, he will be following the dictum of America first. And his entire support base, the voter base, is strongly inclined to agree with him that this concept of Make America Great Again certainly depends on opening up global markets to American exports. Now, we have some fundamental problems in regard to US demands. Let me make it very clear. Of course, India has consistently protected its agriculture and dairy sectors, and we have rejected US demands to allow imports from these sectors. There are some specific points. America wants to export to us genetically modified soybeans and corn. Now, there are lots of concerns about genetically modified crops. In fact, here in America itself, you know, I've been interacting with a lot of people, and a lot of them think that genetically modified crops cause some human disorders. In fact, some of them even could cause autism. So it's not so easy to let the Americans pressurize us to buy genetically modified crops. Secondly, as regards their dairy products, you know, it is well known that in America, cattle feed includes animal feed. Animal products are mixed into cattle feed. And there are lots of cultural reasons and religious reasons why Indians may not be wanting to consume.
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is the revolt of 1947. I mean, if that does, draw some sort of, analogy from your ambassador, and not the swanky-looking packaging and the attractive taste that these genetically modified soybeans are going to put for the market, we need to take care of our own farmers here back at home as well. Our own soybeans, I think that's got to be priority number one. Doctor, let me come to you very quickly next. Can India afford to pivot away? Because we're talking about the trade surplus which India enjoys and Donald Trump doesn't like at this point in time. Can we afford to pivot away from this US trade, bilateral partnership that we have, or diversification will force us some other way, which is going to end up hurting us. Can we afford to pivot away from this bilateral trade surplus?
I don't think either the Americans can entirely pivot away from India as well, because the relationship that has been built, especially in the last 20 years, is very deep. There are a lot of institutional linkages which runs across all the three services of the Indian Armed Forces and also the American Armed Forces. There is a lot of traction in new technologies, including quantum technology and artificial intelligence. Trump presidency is really important, but we also have to remember that the presidency stands for 4 years, and the congressional elections are coming on very soon. So the U.S. Policies are also beyond the presidential policies. There is much more running in between the two countries. So I think it's not a question of pivoting away from this and that. It's a question of recalibrating in order to build alternatives. India definitely has to focus more on regional trade arrangements, because let's be sure that the global economic architecture is going in for a kind of churn that we have never seen before. From crisis of multilateral trading blocks.
But I think that's the problem here, Dr. Munish. It is going through a global churn, but the puppet master of that churn seems to be the US president, who's sitting there, who's doing all he can. And thank you for your attention on that particular front as well. On that note, let's also try and understand where the India-US trade talks stand at this point in time. We're trying to ask that question, why India-US trade talks are still on thin ice. India continues to guard its agriculture and dairy sector, just like Ambassador was telling us, like a fortress, refusing to throw open the gates to US products. For New Delhi, these are not just economic issues, but political minefields. Washington, meanwhile, wants unrestricted market access. They would love that. Capitalist market, make America great again, especially in these very sectors of farming, agriculture, poultry, dairy. An interim trade deal, if announced, might conveniently sidestep them for now. But these are, of course, issues which, once pushed under the rug, might become a carpet bomb later on. Trump has consistently demanded that India fully eliminate tariffs and non-tariff barriers that block US exports. Donald Trump is nudging India to go big on US energy and defense deals. Think oil, think gas, even F-35 jets, all part of his plan to shrink the US-India trade gap. Donald Trump and US officials are pressing India to open up key sectors like agriculture, like industrial goods, vehicles, especially the electronic vehicles. Some sort of a sorry point between Elon Musk and Donald Trump back at home when it comes to electronic vehicles. But we're talking about wines and genetically modified crops by lowering or removing duties in bilateral trade agreement talks. US exporters are eyeing the Indian market, and they want the red carpet, not red tape. Talks are still on, but these sticky points that are going through on your screens could make or break this interim deal. Will diplomacy prevail before the tariff hammer drops in August? Well, Ambassador with us right on the other side. Ambassador, what do you think? You've been mentioning these sticky points for the longest time now. Do you think an interim trade deal is on the cards? You've understood and taken a look at the statement coming from the government as well, and what Donald Trump says. But again, I'm mentioning here, I'll have to do that. Donald Trump walks back. He takes his words back before you even know it. So who's really serious on this front?
I have noted the comments of our Commerce Minister. He said that India remains optimistic about striking a deal with Washington. At the same time, he has said that the farmers' interests will be well protected and that India is sensitive in this regard. So it's not so easy to work out a trade deal despite all the pressure that Donald Trump is trying to exert. He uses pressure tactics with everybody. He has done it with Canada, with UK, with Europe, with Japan, and also with India. So that is his normal style. Now, should we give in to this pressure? I think we have to weigh all the pros and cons, and certainly protecting the interests of our farmers comes uppermost in our considerations. Now, let me tell you that there are some points that I have been able to gather while talking to intellectuals here. And that is that probably the Americans may settle for a quota system. In other words, we give them a percentage of whatever our imports are. In other words, we don't allow full access, but some sort of a quota arrangement. This is perhaps what their fallback will be. But to think that Donald Trump will completely rescind or withdraw or bow down in regard to his pressure to put tariffs on India without anything coming from our side is unrealistic, because he's hell-bent on showing that he means business, and he is a very transactional person. He is always looking for deals. He is trying to get a big, beautiful deal with India in terms of trade. And if he gives in completely, then he will appear weak before his own voter base. So I suspect that there will be very tough times ahead for our negotiators.
All right, then. Everything that he seems to do has to be big and it has to be beautiful, at least from where he's looking at it, Ambassador. Dr. Munish, also pay heed, do take a look at this as well. Minutes after dropping that tariff bomb earlier in the evening, Donald Trump shared another post stating, "We have a massive trade deficit with India." That's what he put out. I'm just glad he did not say thank you for your attention and make America great again, because he just seems to do that every time. Massive trade deficit with India. Now, the United States currently runs a $45.7 billion trade deficit with India. These are facts and numbers right in front of you, so that you make understanding of it on your own. 32.86 in 2021, 2022, in just the next year, 27.68, 35.33, 41.18. So the deficit in billion dollars is, of course, growing on that particular front. Dr. Munish, let me ask you this right up front. Is this a case of Donald Trump maybe asking too much and too fast?
I think, you put the, like, you hit the nail on the head, in terms of, and seconding what Ambassador said, I would, use another word by saying that he's not only transactional, he is hyper-transactional. And there is a day trader's mentality to how Trump approaches trade deals. He wants things too fast and, too much. The issue of trade deficit that the U.S. runs, is a case with a lot of countries. It's not just with India. So these are issues that have to be work on, and these are issues that have carried on through different presidencies. So perhaps he's too fast in terms of trying to win that glory of being that president who corrected or, the trade deficit figures of America, but it's not easy. The economic structure of America, the way it trades with other countries, the terms of trade engagement that U.S. has with other countries has a lot to do with the kind of deficit that you see that U.S. runs with other countries, right? So it's not a thing that you can really solve.
I also feel, Doctor, my apologies for interjecting. I feel like this is a situation where the optics of this trade deficit seems to be more than the actual economic impact between these two countries, and the optics does matter for Donald Trump. Like Ambassador put it out, everything that he does, it's got to be big and it's got to be beautiful as well. But at this point in time, let's take a quick segue to our next chapter. Let's also talk about what India sells to the United States, and let's tell the viewers what we're selling to the US. When we talk about what India sells to the United States, the very trade that now faces a 25% tariff storm from Donald Trump, India exported goods worth $86.5 billion to the United States in the last financial year, and that in itself was a jump of over 11%, showing just how strong American demand is for Indian products. Lots of Indians in America as well, so of course things go off the shelves real quick. So what's driving this export surge? Let's understand that as well. What works for us and for them as well. First up on that list is medicines and biotech products that lead the pack at over $8 billion. That's number one. We've got medicines and biological products. More than 30% of our exports is actually medicine. So pharmaceuticals might be facing that tariff whip very, very soon. Well, we'll have to wait and find out and see. Then next up, this is followed by telecom equipment. This is again worth about $6.5 billion. Very much next on the list. Right after our pharmaceuticals and medicines, it's the telecom equipment. Next on the list is gems and stones at $5.3 billion. We're talking about petroleum products clocking in at $4.1 billion. Gold and jewelry, of course, something that India is really an expert at, $3.2 billion. Cotton garments at $2.8 billion. And iron and steel items at $2.7 billion. But now, all of this could face headwinds as Trump's new tariff threatens to upend this high-growth export pipeline. Will India's top export sectors take a hit? That's the big question. Ambassador, how do you look at these developments? Will India's top sectors now take a big hit on this particular front? Pharmaceuticals, especially, over 30% of our exports, purely medicine.
Well, American dependency on the Indian pharmaceutical sector is well established. Indian generic medicines cost much less.
Will we exploit that dependency,
than
Ambassador? Do you think we're in a position to exploit that dependency?
Look, if the prices of these medicines go up, then Americans are going to be very directly affected. There are already growing concerns here about the fact that healthcare costs will rise and that the premiums which people pay on insurance for health will go up. People are not at all happy about these costs going up. Now, what is the way out? I think that we also want to ensure that our pharmaceutical exports are not affected. As indeed the other exports also. Telecom equipment is needed by the American industry. Gems and jewelry is a big item from India which is consumed by the American public. Likewise, there is a lot that the Americans want us to import from them. So there has to be some kind of an arrangement.
That's actually a great segue, Ambassador. If I could just come in.
It's easier said than done. It's difficult to work out that arrangement.
Let's talk about those imports as well. Next up, our next chapter, let's flip the coin and look at what India imports from the United States as well. Dr. Monish Torangbam, take a look at this. A side of the trade that could also feel the ripple effects from Trump's tariff blitz is the imports as well. According to the Ministry of Commerce, India sourced information tells us crude oil worth $4.5 billion is being imported, petroleum products totaling $3.6 billion, coal and coke valued at $3.4 billion. On the high value goods side, cut and polished diamonds, they came in at about $2.6 billion. That's what data is telling us. Whereas electrical machinery imports touching about $1.4 billion. And aircraft and aviation parts standing at $1.3 billion, still a minuscule part of those imports. Even gold imports from the United States have hit $1.3 billion. And whilst India enjoys a trade surplus, like we've clearly pointed out, they need more of what we do than we need of what they do. The United States remains a key source of energy and cutting-edge equipment. But now, again, that's the bone of contention. 25% tariff move. Could this delicate balance be disrupted? Is the high-flying, Dr. Munish, is the high-flying India-U.S. trade engine now going to be facing these headwinds as well? What's going to work out now, Dr. Munish? Will we have to now buy an F-35 jet, maybe just sort of placate the US president? Look, we're buying stuff from you, not just selling our commodities and our goods to you. What's going to give? What's going to give?
I really doubt if buying F-35 is going to be really the tailwinds of the trade relations between India and United States. And I feel that it's July 30. In Trump's time clock, August 1st is still far away. So we never know, what's going to come up in the next 48 hours or so, where Trump has ever since he took power in January, he has shown a tendency to kick the can down the road when push really comes to a shove. So I think two things I want to say. One is that when we look at the trade figures, I think the Americans also have a lot of things to play in terms of the service sector, not just in trade in goods. So I feel that that's one area that we have to really look into it. And also a lot of the sectors that we import, I mean, energy is one of the main areas of contention in terms of the displeasure with our import from Russia as well, and a lot of other countries which might be in the crosshairs of American foreign policy. So I think it's going to be a tough task of negotiation, of breaking down the breaking points and making sure that we work out a mid part. I feel that in the days to come, we might be looking at a very temporary trade deal, which is not a trade, which is something that might placate Trump for a time being, but
Yeah.
which might not be very
That's
permanent in nature.
That's also the silver lining that the economic advisor Kevin Hassett has also given us. But I'm just thinking, do we have time to work out something? I mean, we just have about a day and a half before that August 1st deadline, because it still stands. And the final chapter over here, ladies and gentlemen, to both my panelists here as well. What next for India? Let's also quickly take a look at that. What might be coming our way? The road ahead for India. Ambassador, let's try and understand what next for India. The first thing that comes to my mind, Ambassador, is the Quad Summit. What happens to the Quad Summit now? Because without a perfect trade deal in place and both the leaders of these nations seeing each other eye to eye, this was Donald Trump's brainchild before Joe Biden took it up, the entire Quad Summit. And many are also saying under Donald Trump, maybe this grouping becomes a military alliance. You never know what's going to happen. You never know anything with Donald Trump. So what next for India, and whether the Quad is going to happen? We're supposed to host it, aren't we?
Well, Kabir, I think the Quad Summit will take place. India would not like to disrupt the relationship with the United States even more than Trump's statements have already done. But Kabir, you were absolutely right in hinting at the US interest in exporting defense equipment to India. I've spoken to analysts here, and they say that, look, the US is the world's largest exporter of defense equipment. India is the world's largest importer, and there is a natural affinity. Now, let me also mention that the American defense production industry is part of their deep state. And this defense production industry influences state policy hugely. It finances presidential candidates. It finances candidates for the elections to the House of Representatives. So they are very powerful and influential, and they want to increase exports to India. They see India as a very big market. They don't like the fact that we are buying Rafales from France and we are looking at other markets, and that the Russians continue to be a big exporter. That is why it should be noted that Trump highlighted India's not just oil import from Russia, but also the import of military equipment. So certainly the Americans are eyeing the Indian defense market. We have reservations. We are emphasizing on Make in India. We want them to, yes, of course, we export equipment to us, but we want joint production. We want transfer of technology. Now, the American defense production sector is not very keen on that. So the road ahead is full of question marks, bumps. But I'm sure that our government will be able to negotiate these bumps and still manage to steer on the road ahead and work towards a mutually beneficial relationship. Nonetheless, as I said earlier, I don't see the the Quad Summit will be disrupted. It will be held because we need to still have a working relationship with the United States, and we don't want to totally upset the apple cart.
And, with Jaishankar and his own bonhomie with Penny Wong, with Marco Rubio, I think the foreign ministers are going to make sure that the Quad Summit actually does go on and in place. Now, Dr. Monish, of course, in just about a couple of days, we'll understand where these tariffs do stand. But I'm trying to look at the silver lining here, apart from what Kevin Hassett has, of course, put at our disposal. This friction, long-term friction, could this lead to now India looking at how it can sort of diversify its trade portfolio and end its over-reliance on the United States? That's one aspect that we do need to touch upon as well.
Well, first of all, I think the diversification process is already happening, and not only for India, for a lot of countries. Among
FTA,
ASEAN
look at the
countries,
FTA with the United Kingdom as well. What a great free trade agreement.
Yeah, I think, that as I mentioned earlier, the churn is already happening. Diversification is already happening. I think the Trump administration went in for a drastic change in terms of shifting from the friend-shoring policies that the Biden administration had. So I think we are responding to it, in fairly and squarely in terms of protecting and promoting our own economic and also security interests. And I do second Ambassador in saying that the Quad Summit and all the other paraphernalia of India-U.S. institutional linkages, particularly in the strategic sector, is perhaps going to continue despite the hurdles that we are facing. In the last 20 years as well, and before that, India and U.S. relations have faced bigger hurdles than this and more sticky hurdles than this. So I think both the sides are going to work on this, and the Quad Summit will continue. And it's going to be a long road to really dominate the Indian defense inventories with U.S. weaponry, because the Russian inventory in the Russian weapons and systems in the Indian inventory carry a lot of legacy platforms, which are not easy to replace, very, very, very fast. And India is already looking at a lot of churning which is happening in terms of the increase in defense spending among the European countries as well.
Oh, we're ready.
We're
ready. We certainly are ready.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the viewers would agree that we are certainly ready. On that note, Ambassador Dayal and Dr. Munish, many thanks for joining us here on the broadcast, helping us put things into perspective, sticking around for all these chapters. And we're going to be very interesting to see what really happens on the tariff front. Will an interim deal help us out here or not? Many thanks for joining us here, gentlemen.
Many thanks.
All right, then. So we will get to know very quickly as to what happens in this tariff tiff. Donald Trump's tariff heist, will it reap any benefits? A little bit of a summary. What we're trying to understand is that this is turning out to be a little bit more about prestige issue and optics than actual economic impact. The bilateral trade deficit that United States feels at the expense of Indian exports and our small imports compared to that seems to be rubbing Donald Trump off the wrong way. But we've drawn the red lines. We're going to protect our MSME sector. We're going to protect our farmers, our dairy, and our agricultural sector. What's going to happen? Well, let's hope that good sense prevails. Many thanks for watching this segment. We're going to slip into a quick commercial breather here. Top developments right on the other side. Keep it with News 9.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.